Okay, chapter 5, the first paragraph, first halacha. Shem she'achocham nikar b'chochmaso u'b'deios. Just as a wise man is recognized through his perspective, which is wise, and his values, u'muvdal behem misharam, and he's removed from the level of the commoner because of his profoundness of wisdom, of knowledge, and perspective. So when he begins speaking, you understand he is not the same classification as the ordinary person. He's elevated. He's an elevated person. He has to be recognized through his behavior, the way his eating, his drinking, ubiloso, and the way he cohabits. Ubasis srochov, regarding his mundane actions. Ubidiburo, as he speaks differently, more refined, more articulate. Ubilucho balmusho, as he walks, his gait is not a gait which displays, we'll see, arrogance, displays humility, and his attire. Now, years ago, there was a suit company. It was called Petrocelli Suits. It was owned by a Jew, even though the name was Petrocelli. And they had a big billboard. And on the Lower East Side, I think it was on Houston Street, it said, wear at Petrocelli and feel like $1 million. You want to feel like $1 million? You wear a Petrocelli suit. Okay, this is when the suits had big lapels, double-breasted, big lapel suits. Ubamabusho. Now, what type of attire do you wear? Which displays and announces to the world who you are, what you are, or it's a little more stately. It speaks and identifies you, who you are, what you represent. You're not there to make a statement to the world. You're there to be who you are and to be recognized who you are as a person of note, because that person representing that persona could be a role model for others to follow and to be impressed with. And it's important to be impressed with the right things, with right values, the right perspectives. Ubekilkul dvorov, ubevaso b'masno. How he articulates his words, or how he does his actions, and how he transacts his business. People, sometimes they're cutthroat when it comes to a negotiation. No, there's a way to behave. That's not what it's all about. That you gotta get the deal. It's not getting the deal. If it displays certain type of behavior which is inappropriate, well, it's within the law. It's within the parameters of being legal. One thing has nothing to do with another, but that's not the way you behave. You don't behave this way. It's a problem in terms of it doesn't display appropriate behavior. He says, in addition to being appropriate, and it should recognize that it's the actions of a wise person who has appropriate perspective, his actions should be pleasant. Pleasant is beyond being appropriate. Pleasant, bios, and exceptionally refined. Not just refined, exceptionally refined. You find many people who are nice people, good people, but this person, because of who he is, his level of understanding, wisdom, perspective, he should be seen head and shoulders above the average person, that he should be so-called the role model for what a person should be. B'sukonim biyoser. Ketzad, for instance, give an example. Talmid Chacham. Person is a Talmid Chacham. What's a Talmid Chacham? We find that one of the vessels of the Mishkan was the Aron, the Ark. What did the Ark contain? The tablets, the second set of tablets, the first set of tablets that were broken, and it contained the Torah. So what was the ark? The ark was a repository for Torah. And the Torah goes out of its way to tell us that the ark was not only gold on the outside, it was gold on the inside. Why is that important for us to know? So the Talmud tells us, because any Talmud Chacham, which is not Tocha Kebaru, that his internal is not consistent with his external, he's not a Talmud Chacham. Person can be a walking encyclopedia, instant recall. But if that knowledge is not integrated in his behavior, that he's actually behaves as he looks, he's not a Talmud Chacham. Talmud Chacham means it's what I say, that's what I am. What I know, that's what I am. It's not do as I say, but do as I do. He's a do-Jew. As it says in Pirkei Avos, when you study, it's Lumen Anas Lasos. We study to actualize what we study. That person is consistent on the inside as on the outside. As a result of that, he says, person who's a Talmud Chacham, lo yegargaron, he should not be a glutton, should not eat and drink in a gluttonous manner. El ochel machol aroi lavers esgufo. He should eat only foods which are there to nourish his body, should be healthy. Lo yochal mimen achila gaso. Don't overeat. Even if you eat healthy foods, do not overeat. Meaning you gouge yourself. It's not appropriate. No, it displays, you live to eat rather than eat to live. You have to display purposeful. You have to be purposeful. Purpose. Well, yeah, rode from malus bitno. You should not always be consumed with pursuing areas of food just to fill your belly. A person has a new restaurant opens. Got to try it. Everybody's talking about it. You understand? That's not a reason to go there. Why do you have to try it? Okay? The answer is because this is part of his perspective that he has to satisfy that craving of food. Everybody as a human being craves. But you realize as human being, if we wean ourselves from certain type of things over time, you no longer crave, whatever that may be. Initially, it may be difficult. But over time, if you stay away from it long enough, you lose interest. The body doesn't crave it any longer. But a person who's looking always to satisfy that, he's always craving. When you crave, you want to fill as much as you have. When do you stop eating? When you can't eat anymore. That's when you stop eating. That's when ancient Rome, they used to actually, after they ate to their, beyond the point they couldn't eat more, they would actually regurgitate the food to give themselves a greater capacity to eat. Achetipach kreisam, these people who pursue to fill their bellies, they eat to the point, food and drink, where their innards are going to burst to that degree. They used to have a hot dog contest in Coney Island. How many hot dogs could you eat? There's a person, he put down, I think, 186 hot dogs. Could you imagine? He had to be a big guy. But you realize he ruptured his intestines. He ruptured it. He expanded to the point. You blow up a balloon. You blow up beyond a certain point, it bursts. That's what happens. A human being has a capacity. These people don't know any limits. You don't know a limit. What should the limit be? The limit is to be satisfied. The limit is to eat a third less than you're full. Then your full capacity. That's what I'm saying. That's to be healthy. If you go beyond that, and even if you eat to your fullest capacity, once you go to that, you go beyond. And if you go beyond, then you're stretching it. A woman who's pregnant, she has stretch marks when she becomes pregnant. Why? Because the baby stretches a body beyond its capacity. So the scarring, I mean, goes away. After a while, the woman recovers, it goes away. They're called stretch marks. Ba'alei mefurish b'Kabbalah, and regarding these type of people who eat to the point where their stomachs are going to burst, their intestines are going to burst. Zarisi perish al pneichem. I will spread the perish, that's the undigested food, the equivalent almost feces on your faces. You know, the Talmud tells us it's a reality that when a person dies, the body naturally swells, starts swelling. Alan, you're on. He'll tell me whether it's correct or not. The body naturally swells, and it swells to the point that eventually sometimes it bursts. And when it bursts, if there's any undigested food in the stomach, it like explodes, and there's a bag of something which is putrid, which covers the face of the person. And that's the reason why when a person's buried in the ground, as the body decomposes, the first thing that bursts is the stomach. And that's the reason why when, there's Jewish preparation for burial, what we call tara, the different customs how to do the tara. It's all based Kabbalistic, but one of the customs is they actually, there's certain muscles in the body which allow the food to remain in certain parts. When a person dies, God forbid, everything is open. You put it in through the mouth, it comes out through the rectum. It's like open. So what they do is when they prepare the person for burial, it's like the preparing for a colonoscopy. They put water through the mouth and they rinse out the innards. Why? So when the person eventually will decompose and his body will burst in the grave, the body is not in a disgraceful state. But it has to do with this verse here. Hashem says, I will cause the perish, the undigested food to be cover your faces. It's like vomit. It's literally that type of thing. Partially digested food, that's perish. These people who eat and drink, and they're always celebrating. All the days of life, they're always into celebration. Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow I shall die. Take it all in as much as you can. He's quoting a verse. There's a verse in the prophets. Eat and drink, eat and drink, because tomorrow we will die. But he says that type of eating, that perspective is the way evil people eat. Because all that matters is the now. Because if there's no now, there's no future. And their tables, this level of display of food, their tables are filled with kiyas, vomit, with feces, where there's anything left but that. Because what is the value of food? The value of food is to live. But if all the value is that's about all the person is. He's worth his weight in what? Exactly. When a person walks into a restaurant, he always orders the best food on the menu, and then he orders doubles. When the maitre d' sees this person come through the door, gets excited, not only because of the tip, because he gets commission on the menu. But what's it all about? He sees him as what? He sees him as the dollar bill. He doesn't see him as a human being. He sees him, what's his worth? That's it. More than that, if you bring a dog in and you buy dog food, what is the value of that dog? The amount of money you're going to make on selling it, the dog food. A human being, his value is placed on what? On what he ingests. A person who eats to live, his value is not the food. His value is his life. Now, what's his life? We'll talk about the life is. Are you philanthropic? Are you giving? Are you a believing person? Do you contribute to society? That's who the person is. But who am I? I'm a food gourmet. You know, he's the expert. You know, if you want to know anything about a restaurant, speak to this guy. He's been through all of them. It's not because he writes the guide, you know, restaurant guide. It's not the reason. It's very interesting. People, they pride themselves in things which almost it's so inane and no value. You see this person? He could tell you every World Series from 1921 today, who the pitcher was, who the catcher was, and who the team was. And the guy's glowing. How many people could say that? So you tell me, what's its value? So when he's among a bunch of nobodies, and he has to be the life of the party. That's his value. What's the value of knowing that? You tell me he knows Encyclopedia Britannica, committed to memory. Okay, it says knowledge or it says value. You could call knowledge for that person, but he could tell you every World Series and where it was played, everything, even the number on the player's jersey. He could tell you the number. Unbelievable. You know, this guy, he lived in a tenement in the 30s, and he could tell you each sanitation collector what he wore every day when he picked up the tin cans and threw them onto the truck. You're gonna pride yourself in that. You think that has any greater value than that? Has no greater value. Person's a wise man. How much variety does he have when he eats? One cooked item, oshnayim. Two. And he eats only enough to sustain him. Doesn't overeat. Because again, he doesn't need a choice. Because what is the emphasis of his eating? He eats, he lives, he eats to live, not lives to eat. And therefore, he only one type of food, two types of food. He doesn't need a whole variety, that because he craves, the question, which ones does he crave more? King Solomon says in Proverbs, a tzaddik eats to sate his soul. That means, why are you eating? To live. That's it. So if you eat to live, and anything more than eating out of the ordinary compromises your life and displays something which is out of control, you don't do that. Because if you want to be, a tzaddik means he does everything correctly. You overstep your bounds, you can't do them correctly. You lose balance. What happens if you lose your balance? You fall. If a person puts himself in a position, he could become out of control, you're not in a good place. Now, when the Chochem, we're talking about Talmud Chochem, eats this little bit, as he explained, haroilo. Everybody has a capacity. A person's physically a larger man, has to eat more. A person is a smaller framed person, he has to eat less, or based on what the doctor suggests he eats, or his nutritionist says he has to eat. Lo yochlena elu beisu al shulchano. You should eat it in your home, privately, in a more private setting. Lo yochel bechanus, lo b'shuk. You shouldn't eat it in the store, which is a semi-public location, or in the market, which is wide open, where people could see you eating. Elo b'nei tzorach godol. If you have no choice, you can eat it in a public area. Why? That he shouldn't be seen in a negative light in the eyes of people. Let me explain what this means. The Gemara tells us, the Talmud tells us, that a student is not permitted to go to the bathhouse with his teacher, with his Rebbe. That he should see him in a naked state, even though he knows he's going to the bathhouse. But he shouldn't be there when he undresses and going into the water, unless the rabbi, his teacher, says, I want you to be there to assist me, whatever. But otherwise, he's not permitted. He's not permitted to be in the barbershop when the Rebbe is taking a haircut. But he knows Yesterday, he was not as groomed as he's today. He was the barber. But to see him being groomed and his hair cut the way his hair is cut, that puts him on an even level. We're on an even playing field. You see him in an ordinary state. He has needs like I have needs, same needs. We're really the same. The only way you could maintain that perception of reverence is you don't get distracted with these other things. So if years ago they used to have Horn and Hearted, and people used to sit by the window on these little tables, and they would eat what they took out of this little, these little cubicles, and they sat there and they didn't look out, and people would watch the way they'd eat. They'd sit there. If you go out to a farm and you see the way the cow chews its cud, when it tears the grass out of the ground, you see this guy eating, the way he's chewing and chomping, looks the same. But you see, that's a human being has to eat. And eating means you have teeth, you chew, and the better you chew, it's easy to digest. That's just the reality. But factually, seeing a person in that context, it minimizes the person to be something special. Because you put him on an ordinary level, or less than ordinary. Therefore, if the person is supposed to represent something of which you're supposed to revere, anything that's going to detract from that reverence, you shouldn't be there, because it'll be a detraction from that or a distraction from that. So therefore, you should not go to be in the barber shop when the barber's cutting your Rebbe's hair. You shouldn't be in the bathhouse when he dresses and bathes. He should eat in private, because when you see him eating, you see him in an ordinary state. When you see him ordinary, that minimizes who he really is. I'll give you an example. Very interesting story. More at the end of Brocha speaks about, when a Jew does his bodily functions, even in that area, you have to do it in a state of modesty. You have to be modest. Nobody's there, and you're doing something which is so basic, almost what every animal has to relieve itself. A human being has to do the same. And you have, in that state, in that area, you have to be modest. Be covered, just don't undress yourself, be fully naked in that area where you do the bodily functions. So Rebbe Akiva, his Rebbe goes in to do his bodily functions. He follows his Rebbe into that area. So his Rebbe says to him, Akiva, excuse me, could I have a little private time? So Rebbe Akiva says to his Rebbe, Torahi v'tzarchani lilmod. The reason why I'm coming in is not because I want to be there when you do the bodily functions. I want to see how you conduct yourself within the state of modesty when you do the bodily functions. Once I learn, I don't have to be there, because I want to know how to conduct myself even in that state. And then the same story happened. Rebbe Akiva now was doing his bodily functions. His Talmud, his students comes in. Rebbe Akiva says, excuse me, could you give me some private time? And his Talmud, his student says the same thing. Torah, it's Torah. I have to learn. I have to see exactly in real time. Once I'm that, I don't have to in any way impose on you. But what's the Gemara talking about? When you learn something abstractly, it doesn't have the same effect as you see it in real time. So Rebbe Akiva originally his Rebbe thought, that you're smart enough and wise enough, you exactly fully absorb the value of that. Rebbe Akiva says, no, it's not, for me, it's not enough. Seeing it in reality, it'll make a difference to me. So if that's the case, that's Torah. Once it becomes Torah, the Rebbe said, okay, once you see it in real time, now exactly you know how to behave. Even that private setting, what level of modesty you have to conduct yourself. That's the concept. And Rebbe Akiva, with his student, same thing. His student comes in, he says, excuse me, because again, he believed that maybe a student would grasp it at a level that he can internalize it. The point is not necessary. Student says, no, I'm not at that level. I have to see it in real time to be able to integrate it into my behavior. So Rebbe Akiva says, if that's the case, that then becomes Torah. Therefore, he allows him. Once he leaves, now he knows exactly how to conduct himself. So the same thing. To go and see the Rebbe, the Chacham, in an ordinary state, he's no different than we are. He eats, he drinks, he talks. He talks to his wife like I talk to my wife. Maybe if you hear the words and the context of the conversation, maybe it's a little different. But still, it doesn't make a difference. I always pointed out, when Moshe had forewarned Paro of the plague of blood, what did he tell him? What did Hashem say? That all the fish will die in the Nile. Okay? Now, and Paro calls his magicians in, not impressed. We could take water through sorcery and turn it into blood. So if that's the case, why did Moshe say that the fish will die? The fish and die will die. Why? Because sorceries, you can't change the chemical makeup or whatever it is. Even though it looks like blood, its texture is blood, but its chemical makeup is H2O. Fish could live in that. When God turns water into blood, it's a different reality. Therefore, Moshe added, the fish and I will die. This is not sorcery, because if it's sorcery, fish could live. What happens? The plague comes. Pharaoh's not impressed. My sorcerers could do the same thing. What do you mean your sorcerers could do the same thing? In your blood, fish live. In this blood, fish can't live. Don't you see the difference? It's all the same. So you see, this kind of person doesn't make that discernment. The rabbi eats, I eat. He swallows and eat. He chomps, I chomp. So you're putting yourself on the same level. Once you do that, the rabbi becomes minimized. He's no longer revered as he should be revered. Because he becomes your peer, but he's not your peer. This is the reason why, even though we say a Torah sage who has a right to waive his honor, but very often he has to insist on certain things, because if he waives certain things, the person will not see him properly and not appreciate him properly. Let's say a Rebbe would say to a student, you call me, his name is Yaakov. He says, the student says to the Rebbe, can I call you Jack? Right? And the teacher says, you call me Jack. But you don't understand. If he starts calling him Jack, like he calls the other guy Jack, like Jack in the Box, the Rebbe is not going to have that level of presence to that person who calls him Jack. It's not. It's going to become a different reality. Jack, would you like to go out and have a smoke together? The rabbi smokes, something. Maybe we'll go have a drink together. No, you're Jack, I'm Jack. We smoke, we drink, okay. But you know more than I do. But the Rebbe's not just because he knows more than you. He has a representation. He has a presence representing something that you're not. To appreciate that, he has to be elevated, removed from the way you behave. Although his behavior, he eats and drinks as you eat and drink. He bathes as you bathe. He has his hair cut the way you have your hair cut. Even the same hairdresser doesn't make a difference. Person studying halacha, when you say Damida, you should wear a hat. You should wear a hat. Your head should be covered. And somebody comes, he's on vacation, he doesn't have his hat with him. He always prays with a hat. And Ramosha Feinstein, he says, Rabbi Feinstein, could I borrow your hat to pray in the Amida? You understand? If you put Rabbi Feinstein's hat on your head, and that represents, and it's his Hamburg, even though you don't wear it, it's inappropriate. Better pray without a hat than wear Rabbi Feinstein's hat. Because the moment let's say he says, I'm sorry, it's not available. It's the rabbi, he's stuck up. It's your problem, it's not his. He understands. Because if he allows himself to give you his hat, automatically you're going to see him less. And you pride yourself, I wore Rabbi Feinstein's hat, you'll tell the whole world whose hat you wore. Lyndon Baines Johnson, he wore the 10-gallon, Texan hat. You couldn't wear his hat because it would go down to your jaws. That's how big it was. Okay, he had a big head. Now, Lady Bird would be upset. You couldn't wear his hat. It's 10-gallon.